And we start tonight in a Middle East that is coming apart at the seams and a Trump-Netanyahu axis that is really trying the world's patience. Bibi Netanyahu has been dragged, kicking and screaming almost, into peace talks with Lebanon. That's not because he wanted to, not because Washington leaned on him, although we know they did, but because the global backlash against his indiscriminate bombing campaign in southern Lebanon, 254 people dead, overwhelming civilian casualties, including women and children in buildings that were never military targets. All of it has finally cracked the diplomatic shield the United States has held over him for years. European capitals or Gulf states are walking out of meetings. Even Trump's own envoys are reportedly telling Bibi the same thing privately. We cannot keep defending this at the United Nations. And so tonight, reluctantly, Netanyahu has agreed to go to the table to speak to the Lebanese about a peace deal in Lebanon. It's a deal he swore he would never make. All of this is coming against the backdrop of a ceasefire that Donald Trump negotiated with the Iranians and has fallen apart in less than 24 hours. Tehran announced today that they were closing the Strait of Hormuz again as a result of those bombings by Israel in Lebanon. Later on, they announced that they are going to leave the strait open, but under very tight conditions. Only 6 vessels have been able to pass through. That's a fraction of what normally goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, into this most problematic of a chaotic mess that you could possibly imagine in the world, Donald Trump has sent his vice president, JD Vance, to Pakistan for talks because apparently he has an idea of how to solve it.
I found fascinating, as he said, we refuse to give up the right to enrichment. And I thought to myself, you know what? My wife has the right to skydive, but she doesn't jump out of an airplane because she and I have an agreement that she's not going to do that because I don't want my wife jumping out of an airplane. We don't really concern ourselves with what they claim they have the right to do. We concern ourselves with what they actually do. And I think the president's been very clear on the enrichment question.
Well, that will work out really well for you, JD Vance. I'm sure if you're telling them that story about the skydiving and Usha Vance, that'll convince them to give up the nuclear bombs they've been trying to develop in order to have a deterrence against nations like yours, which keep trying to blow them out of existence. Which brings us to this man, Mark Rutte. He's in charge of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO.
World safer today than it was before the war was started?
Absolutely. Because, and this is thanks to President Trump's leadership, the degrading these capabilities is really very important for your and my safety here in the US, in Europe, in the Middle East.
Mark Rutte has a very difficult job. He's the guy who's meant to try keep America inside NATO while Donald Trump tries to pull the United States out of the alliance. Despite what he's saying there, of course, there's no truth to the fact that America or the world is immeasurably safer. Yes, the Iranians have less firepower in their arsenal, but they haven't used everything up, and they apparently now have control of the Strait of Hormuz, which was never an issue before, as those were international waters. So are we safer? That is certainly a big question, but we can all understand, definitely give points to Mark Rutte for at least doing his best to try and suck up to the President of the United States when all else must be failing. But it is a question we are all asking ourselves tonight. Are we feeling safer? Is this president the right person to lead this country? Have we got the right guy in the job? So even Megyn Kelly, the one-time supporter of Donald Trump, had this to say about the president.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I am sick of this shit. I'm sick of it. Can't he just behave like a normal human? I mean, honestly, like the president, at 380, yes, just shut up. Fucking shut up about that shit. You don't threaten to wipe out an entire civilization. We're talking about civilians just casually in a social media post. I am the first to try to understand Trump and his strategy and to not freak out over his weird social media posts and language that is loose and incendiary. But this is completely irresponsible and disgusting.
Responsible and disgusting. For once, I agree with Megyn Kelly, and that is a very rare occurrence. Even Megyn Kelly there, former Fox News anchor. So if that wasn't enough of a day for Donald Trump, the First Lady, Melania Trump, appeared before the White House press corps to deliver a statement. It came as a surprise to everybody, and the topic, Jeffrey Epstein. Here she is denying ever having a relationship with the former friend of Donald Trump and the accused human trafficker.
The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. The individuals lying about me are devoid of ethical standards, humility. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a tribal note.
I think she means trivial note there, but there you go. That's Melania Trump explaining her friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Sure, Melania, these do look very innocent, just the kind of photos you take when you're out in the town with people you barely know. And there are many of these photos of them. That's Melania with Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. They all seem quite attached to each other in these photos. I remember flying back with Donald on his plane. The first weekend I went to visit you in Florida was the weekend he met Melania, and he kept on coming out of the bedroom saying, "Wow, what a hot piece of ass." That's a slightly different story than is in Melania's book, which she claims is the only story about her meeting Donald. There's other evidence in the files which show that Melania was introduced to Donald Trump by Jeffrey Epstein. The question everyone is asking is, why did Melania Trump do this? The only conceivable answer is that the First Lady of the United States is trying to get ahead of what might be coming out. What might be coming out is audio of Michael Wolff and Jeffrey Epstein. And finally tonight, a story about Canada, or more accurately, about what X and Elon Musk and other operatives who are trying to paint Canada as a backwards, woke, crazy place, has decided to share with the world. This is a clip of NDP MP Leah Gazan on the floor of Parliament. She's talking about a $7 billion cut to Indigenous services.
Prime Minister Carney is cutting $7 billion between Indigenous Services Canada and Crown Indigenous Relations. They provided zero to deal with the ongoing genocide of MMIW G2SLGBTQI.
And that acronym is exactly what got everyone fired up online, because what did she just say? It sounds crazy. It is, of course, the extended acronym for the LGBTQ community. I share it with you, but I just simply can't remember it. That was followed online by an AI-generated clip, which showed JD Vance winning the spelling bee with that word.
JD, if you spell this word correctly, you will be crowned this year's Scripps National Spelling Bee Champion. MWG2SLGBT. Shoe plus. That is correct. You are this year's National Spelling Bee Champion. Congratulations.
And that's just the kind of day it's been tonight here on Narativ. Netanyahu is at the table he swore he would never sit at. Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz. JD Vance is on his way to Pakistan to help solve the crisis with a skydiving metaphor about his wife. Meanwhile, the First Lady is preempting a bombshell she'll not name, but we know it's about Jeffrey Epstein. And somebody made $1.5 billion on a fake ceasefire bet using Polymarket. And then you've got JD Vance coming back into the news at the end there, trying to prove that America has it more together than Canada. That's the news. We'll see you tomorrow.